Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei joined Fallen Angels instead of Devils Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support the Agent 22 for writing that awesome fanfic and also make sure to comment on this story, link in description. Let's start this video. Was the day in the world of the Adrilites stand still. The skies of Adriel, once filled with lifeful colors, now deprived of it. Although the colors of buildings remained the same, the people that lived in Elysium are different matters. For they are conflicted as an important date has finally come. This event will change everything within the alliance against the chaotic lords of the void. This event was known as the Trial of Issei, the wielder of the divine apparatus, known as the Fallen Supreme Gear. On a small island surrounded by all the oceans of Adriel, a lonely building stands atop of the island. It is shaped like a dome and as big as the Colosseum of the once great Roman Empire. On the surface, it may look too big, but it has proven itself bigger than what's under it. Below ground are 24 levels to host the enemies of the Alliance, as well as criminals in 6 by 8 feet or bigger rooms. In other words, the building is a prison and one out of the 4 prisons built within the realm within existence. Yet, the prison, the Dark Claw Penitentiary, is the first supermax prison as it holds the abnormal and irregular prisoners. Within a cell of level 24 of the penitentiary is mostly empty. The cell is made of stronger materials than the cells of level 1 to 20. Those cells could hold tier 7 to tier 3rd class criminals. Level 21 to 24 holds tier 2 class criminals, while the last level only holds tier 1 class criminals. In this cell of level 24 is void of decorations or paintings. Instead, on the walls are holes, too many to be counted. It serves a purpose for multiple chains rose out of the holes and headed to the center of the cell. At the center of the cell is a figure forced to stand. The reason for him forcing standing is the chains and all manners of cuffs. A helmet that almost completely covered his or her face, leaving the figure to see through the small eye hole severely. Next to it is the neck cuff with 6 or 8 chains attached to it that are at least 8 inches thick. The cuff forced the figure's arms to be atop each other. Like the building, his or her feet were covered by heavy metal cuffs that completely covered the feet. The chains from 3 sides completely covered his or her body so that no one could identify its gender or if the person is still alive and well. The treatment of this person may be considered to be brutal, but it's considered necessary due to his or her status as a tier 2 criminal. It is also considered to be the second most brutal treatment in the penitentiary. A rumor spoke out that tier 1 criminals receive even worse treatment. There has been talk that the said figure should be labeled as a tier 1 criminal. However, due to the figure wearing the divine apparatus and one of the first people to be members of the 7th platoons, that notion was rejected out of respect. It's extremely rare for any of the cards to betray the abyss in any way. However, Adrilites created vast laws and rules that anyone who broke even the weakest of them will face punishment in many forms. It will depend on the law itself to suit the punishment correctly. It has been 2 years already since the figures have been detailed and are awaiting trial. It has been a long time for the figure to see the light of day and any signs of food or water. Luckily for him that he was a member of a card platoon that his organs evolved from his years of service. He even had a hard time sleeping these past 2 years due to the chains, waiting for someone to drag him into a trial and the reason why he was locked up. Then, he hears his cell gate being opened and multiple footsteps. Before he struggled to see who the footsteps belonged to, most of the chains loosened themselves like a serpent and the cuffs on the figure's feet disappeared, allowing the figure to fall into the ground. It has been a while for the figure to walk and is expected of the figure. As the figure struggled to get up on his feet and get his bearings to stand and walk once more. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he was kicked in the stomach, causing to flip and land on the ground with a small thud. It was caused by one of the 4 guards that entered the cell dressed in heavily back armor and cape while wearing bull-horn helmets that marked them as guards of the prisons of Adriel. "You betrayed your own kind," one of the guards said with a deep voice. As the figure's head scanned the one who did this, he was punched into the ground while the other who did the punch said, "You have chosen the wrong side." The figure heard the unsheath of a sword and without warning, he was hit by the sword. Well, he heard, "You are the great deceiver instead of a great protector." While he was downed, he was struck again from behind by a different weapon and was kicked once more by the shoulders. Before they could do further damage to the future, a voice broke their assault on the figure. Enough. The guards turned around only to see Thel Vadim, the stratego of Issei, in polished new armor which he wore during his people's civil war. "But, sir, you must understand that this is the way we treat traitors. Who gave you this right? It is the champion of justice, Traton, who authorized this." "You're wrong." "Excuse me. The ruler of justice will never allow this type of injustice on his watch. I will report this type of unacceptable behavior if you treat my friend with respect." When he saw the guards take a step back in fear, he continued, "Now, why don't you help him and remove the helmet so I could see him face to face?" As instructed, they helped him up by having their arms holding the arm cuffs of the figure. Then, they bring him closer to Thel. After that, they touch a pad on the back of the helmet, causing a sound to be heard that is almost similar to a lock being released. Finally, one of the guards removes the helmet and reveals the figure to be Issei. Although, his hair has grown a bit longer and his right cheek has adopted a slash that seems to be open as if it is still fresh. His eyes may have the same hazel eyes, but it has a dim light. Seeing this look is almost similar to his own where he received his punishment, and it's sad for Thel that Issei would probably receive the same treatment as him or maybe worse. Issei, for what it's worth. Know this, that some of us don't see this as justice of any kind. It wasn't your fault, it was the Lord of Rage. There's no use talking me out of this. It's true that Aya died by the hands of Atrocitus, the Lord of Rage, and abandoned you to fight him, but it was breaking two laws. In some aspects, it is justice of a kind. Besides, are you paying a visit to me or escorting me to Trenton? It's both actually. Let's go, Issei. A total of an hour and a half, Issei was escorted out of Dark Claw and transported by air onto the territories of the champion Trenton. As he arrived, he saw a path that was created for him to be displayed by all people. The majority of them rooted for him to be punished, while the minority of the gathered people looked at him with tears showing their guilt written on their hands. Soon a building came into view of Issei, Thel, and escorts. The building is about 450 feet long, 80 feet wide, and 51 feet high. It was built out of gold, precious gems, and silver, and its designs are a hybrid of the Greek structure at the center, while the sides to be made the same as the manner of a tree. This is actually two buildings in one, the Hall of Judgment where the champion Trajan passed out punishment to the enemies of the Adrilites or the Federation. The other is his manor. It saddened the heart of Issei, for all he had done in the war will be forgotten in just one mistake he had made. It saddened the hearts of the very few that Issei will face unjust punishment for a consequence that no one has foreseen. After walking up the steps of the Hall of Judgment, he managed to see members of his platoon presented in the court. The court is almost like the courts on Earth. Like is the keyword. For such, there are no jury or the court clerk tablet. The champion Trenton didn't need a jury, since his split personalities literally split him into three-person and convincing about two of them to reach a favorable verdict. Which is easier than done, as Trenton is a pretty hard to be convince. As for the court clerk, technology replaced that to record trials such as his. There is the judge's bench which stands tall and proud like a mountain. Normally, there would have been the tables for the defendant and the prosecutor. In this case, there was a stand that had no seat but fences surrounding a person. He could tell that it was the accused stand and where he will face judgment by the champion of justice themselves. Beyond these is the semicircle where spectators witness how justice gives damnation to those who commit crimes against the alliance as a whole. In these seats are members of the champions with their emotional cards present, their siblings, people, and members of the Federation. There are guards on the four corners of the courtroom. They wear light black armor with capes with twin-winged golden swords like a deck of papers. Like the guards of Dark Claw, they wear helmets that are different to the guards of the prisons, jails and the gate, which look exactly like the Solomon helms. Once Issei was at the entrance between the court and the spectators waiting for the court guards to escort him as Thel took a seat, leaving the abusing guards with him alone. By 15 minutes, a door was opened revealing the triplets that made up the champion Trenton. Their human forms look exactly the same with each other with blonde hair, but their eyes are quite different. The middle, Tra, have eyes of gold, while Ta, on the left, have eyes of dark orange and N have the eyes of blues. All wore the clothing of an Earth judge, but each picked a judge's clothing of a different era. As he approaches the judging bench in order to sit on it, one of the guards says, "All rise for Trenton, the champion that brought forth laws to the Alliance." As a cue, all of the spectators stand up to pay their respects to the champion of justice. As well as the court guards opened the entrance and escorted Issei onto the accused stand. "At ease," said Tra as all the spectators seated as the escort guards left the courts to return to their posts. "What do we have?" questioned Tra despite knowing this case. The guard closest to him revealed, "Case number 70,843, it is Adriel versus Great Protector Issei of Astri. Great Protector Issei, the charges against you are that of abandoning your partners in their time of need for a purse of glory and ignoring orders from your champion. All these charges carry a penalty that requires you to break all connections related to us, the Adrilites. How do you plead?" Trenton asked. "I'm pleading innocent," because before Issei could finish his sentence, most of the spectators stood up in anger and shouted at him, "Enough!" and roared with enough power to silence the rebelling spectators. He has the right to defend himself like anyone else. Issei continues, "We were at war with the Lords as Astri, myself, and the rest of her team are near to the Lord of Rage's power source. I wanted to bring this war a step closer to the end for Astri's sake." "For Astri's sake? Isn't that a little hypocritical coming from someone who abandoned her and the team?" Tar retorted. "Yeah, but the war has claimed the lives of those who sided with us. I'd be damned that our enemies claim those lives, as I figured the only way to win this war is the destruction of the power source. As the predicted result will be that a corporation will be destroyed and my team among people will be saved through my actions, whether or not I will die or not from this choice. A few of the spectators were moved by the words of the accused great protector and regretted their shouting at them. However, most of them were stubborn as a bull and still demanded punishment for him, thinking that Issei is covering tracks of his crimes. It was at that point that I learned the consequences of my actions that I didn't know until it was too late. She was still too young to fight against him. If that doesn't convince you that I'm innocent, then I plead guilty, Issei replied as he stared at the floor with his bangs covering his eyes. We, Trenton, the champion of justice and one of the seven, hereby finds great protector Issei guilty of the previously mentioned charges and is sentenced to banishment effectively in the coming week, Trenton declared as he smacked the mallet down, signaling his fate. Most of the spectators stood up in screams of joy and applause. The day before the desired date for the banishment of soon-to-be former Great Protector Issei, preparations for his banishment are nearly complete. As for the final testament, he was escorted by Gariel, Darius Kincaid, Achilles and Eden, who are giving Issei mean looks or sad mien, to a location where all, whether they're Drylights or Federation, to witness the wings removal of the traitor. It was practically the first time when one of them received the punishment. So, they have no idea of what happens when one removed the wings of the converted Drylights. They could hope that he will dead soon after the bill have been prize, than making him a bigger target on his back. After all, Issei is one of the few that the Void's forces truly sees him as a threat bigger than the champions. If he were alive past that, they could figure that Issei will be far weaker than his normal state. In a Drylight biology, a Drylight's wings are like the roots of a tree. The roots of a tree determine the health of the tree, the wings of the Drylight determines its strength. Back to the point, the place is some sort of a planetary semicircle colosseum, where an enormous amount of people with their fists waving to his direction as he passes by them. They were shouting traitor with such hate as Issei felt as if a dagger was plunged into his heart. When he was near the center of the planetary semicircle colosseum, he could see two metal poles that looked like pincers of a scorpion or crab. From there, he saw about two men coming for him. The one from Issei's left is a man in his late 30s or early 40s. He gave a strong face with eyes of dark brown and black hair. He appears to have some sort of semi-heavy muscular body, wearing a skull black shirt and pants. He's Frank Castle, a juggernaut in service of the champion Trenton, or better known as the Punisher. The other is a man in his late 40s with long black hair and dark brown eyes. In contrast to the Punisher, he has an older face because he has grown a black beard. He gave me some sort of a slim body that he always wears a black suit. He is John Wick, former hitman and a juggernaut in service of the champion Trenton. They approached Achilles, Darius, Eden and Gariel that are escorting Issei to the place. The Punisher says, "It's fine. We will take him from here." Darius and Achilles looked at each other for a moment and Gariel was about to say something. The Punisher responds, "You can trust us for much of a task. Besides, Issei wanted your presence for something to sign." The legendary hitman said to the four. The four blinked at this, assuming John Wick is correct, then they might go to Issei. Achilles growled at this because he wanted his former friend to suffer. Eden felt disheartening that someone whom she considered a big brother had to be banished from the only home she lived in. Gariel kept a stoic face at this. She had mixed feelings about this. This is the man that has abandoned his friends in their time of need and the man who helped her time and time again. After a moment or two, Gariel said, "He's all yours, then." With this, Gariel dragged Achilles as he wanted to see the removal of Issei's wings and threw a temper tantrum. Darius was laughing at this as he and Eden followed suit. Once they were gone from Issei's sight, he was escorted by the Punisher and John Wick to the metal poles. When he is between the metal poles light up in purple light. Suddenly, Issei's arms were pulled toward the tips of the poles by an unknown invisible force. The Punisher looks around and says, "It's quite sad that you draw quite a crowd. If they came to hear me beg, they will be disappointed," said Issei with hints of denying his pain to the roaring crowd. Just as he finished saying that, the poles started to spark, electrifying between each other by using Issei as the catalyst. This causes Issei to clenched in pain while he was nearly going to roar in pain, as well as his almost bone-like dragonic silver wings come out as the blue energy feathers seem to enlarge to its limit height. After the electrifying torture has stopped, Issei was on his knees while smoke was emitting from him. He was breathing laboriously with his sight focused on the floor. He could tell the Punisher and John Wick were at least disturbed at this, but they were dismissed for the next phase. Sends two more people to his left and looked toward their direction. Unlike the Punisher and John Wick, who are men, these two are women that are very well known to all within the Federation and the Drylights. The first woman is an amazingly beautiful woman, appearing in her 20s, with light blue hair that reached her hips with matching blue eyes. Her attire was that of a general with a white long-sleeved shirt, skirt, thigh-high boots, and a white hat sitting on her head. There was also a strange tattoo just above her generous chest that gave off a cold feeling. She is known as the Ice Queen, Esdeath Partas, one of the most deadliest Adrilites, and Knight of Varos. The other woman is one of the most beautiful women of Adril. She is a pale long white-haired woman with features that capture all the hearts of male. Her attire was mithril armor. She showed no emotion whatsoever throughout her life as an Adrelite. She is known as Brynhildr, one of the most beautiful women of Adril and warrior under servicing to Trenton. He saw Brynhildr walk from the edge of the metal poles to be viewed by all of the viewers, while Esdeath looks at him in a bloodthirsty smile. But, he could tell that its fate can't see as well as smell sadness in her. Esdeath walks beyond Issei's side as she takes position behind him and next to Issei's great protector wings. She gave one of her hands on the hilt of her weapon. Brynhildr says as she walks around in his sight, there can be no greater betrayal. She then points an accusing finger at Issei, let him be an example for all who dare to break their oath to our alliance. As she finished, the crowd roared as Issei felt a pair of hands grab hold on his wings and felt they were pulling his wings enough to hold straight. Esdeath slowly drew her rapier and raised the weapon, ready to slash one of Issei's wings. Within moments, the rapier comes down severing one of Issei's wings. It took a moment or two for Issei to feel a sharp burst of pain lance through him as his back screamed in agony. This is a signal that one of his wings was severed, leaving a stamp of the wing behind. This sight caused Esdeath to blush, as well as her lower parts begin to burn out of control. Her very being was at war between her loyalty to Adril and claiming Issei as her lover regarding the public. Sadly, Esdeath repeated the same process for the last time to sever the last wing. Once again, Issei fought the urge to break, but his will won that battle a long time ago. As Issei thought that it was finally over, he was proven wrong in the worst manner possible. His face morphed in a terrible shock as he felt the same hands that hold his wings to be clipped grab hold the stamp remains of his wings. Then, they began to pull in brutal force enough for the stamp to be torn from his flesh, leaving 2 lines as the blood oozing with a small amount of flesh escaped from the lines. It was at that point, Issei let out a roar full of pain satisfying the crowd before he became unconscious due to the overwhelming pain. It was the morning of his banishment as the final phase was in play. Issei is currently reading letters written by the ones closest to him, his beloved Astri and those in service of the Champion of Hope. Dear Issei, I would have to graduate you on killing Atrocious and defeating his underlings by destroying this rage core. It had taught us how to defeat them once and for all, as we managed to repeat that action to the Lord of Envy and the weakest lords as it no doubt cripples the Void's remaining forces. It was an irony because your victory brought us steps closer to ending the war that ravaged the multiverse. It is also an irony on freedom we are free of you and you are free of us. Yet, it brings us no happiness for your banishment. We must move forward. Remain in our struggle against all that is wrong in creation to keep all that is right in the order. All living creatures aren't meant to live forever. But what we do for the future for all manners of species will. This future that we all must fight for is the only immortal outcome of our lives. Let nothing grieve you beyond measure. For your life has the potential to be shorter than us, and time will claim its toll. But I am no longer who I was. We have renounced all love we once had for you. For all we care, you died with your adopted sister against the Lord of Rage or before when you had to abandon your friends, family, and your loved ones. I have renounced Astri. Astri died after her lover. I am now the new Champion of Hope Sagira. Your former love interests, Sagira, Lady of the Blue and Champion of Hope and Altria Hamilton. Issei's heart felt like stabbed as the very woman that he loved with all of his heart no longer wanted to be his anymore. Tears leaked down like a stream as sadness took over as the woman whom he had fought for and nearly died for will loathe him from this point on. Knowing that reign greater than his hopes that Kuroka, Tamamo, Esdeath and Mordred Pendragon still love him. He, also, has his feelings with them as well, since he felt like he was married to them all. Once his tears had stopped, he moved to the second letter. With a heavy heart, he read the contents in that letter. Dear Issei, when we first met you or got to know you, it was your kindness or readiness to help people was the first thing that gained our attention. We've had a wonderful friendship that has taught us many lessons or the other way around. But lately, I've been thinking, and I've decided that it's best to end this friendship. We feel that you lied for your reasons of why you abandoned us in our time of need and purse for the sake of fame or glory in battle. It was during the final battle between us and the Lord of Rage that you ignored our cries of help and continued fighting, leaving us to suffer damages and be heavily outnumbered. If we were ever insensitive towards your feelings, we apologize for our behavior. With heavy hearts, we renounce our friendship with you. For all we care, you died with your adopted sister against the Lord of Rage or before when you had to abandon your friends, family, and your loved ones. Your former friends, Michael Bryce, Balin, Eden, Havoc, Wario Zeromer, Ariel, Achilles, Yamazaki Shiko, Gabriel Kinney. Before his emotions could take over again, footsteps were heard. He turned to see Thel with guards on his sides. Issei sighed, I guess that my time draws near. Elle says, Issei, listen. Elle was cut by Issei, there's no need for that, old friend. I made a mistake or two in my service and I have to live by it. Elle's head was looking at Issei's feet before he nodded and had the guard surround Issei. Eventually, they started walking to the only entry of the entire land of the Adriel, a place known as the Elysium's Gate. The place where Issei shall be exiled from Adriel and shall never come back as destiny changed his fate for the worse. All Issei can think of or hope of is what the future, no matter how grim it is, has in store because from now on, his fight against the Void's forces shall be on his own. It's been 90 years since the world entered the first decade of the 21st century. Ever since his banishment to the land of the rising sun, he has earned enough yen for private land. Prior to the year 2010, he has been buying equipment or requirements for building said community and takes about a year and a half to build the community that is hidden from the humans or any other species. The reason for this is that ever since his banishment, there have been several banishments from Adriel. From what he could infer that his banishment generated the champions to have a tighter hold over their underlings. Regardless of them getting caught and punished or fleeing from Adriel, they left a dent in the Adrilites' forces, leaving the Federation to fill in most of the shoes. Even the others who are equals to the champion also chose Exalted and leave with the others to regroup with Issei. After they had found Issei, they organized themselves in order to continue the fight and survive should the Void's forces or Adrilites attempted to wipe them out. Hiding in plain sight does have its advantages as the newly formed Darklighter faction split themselves to different locations where the Lord's recruitment are at work. Being made into a leader of the Darklighters was tough in all regards. Having meetings on a daily basis about what to do, how to proceed into things, and whether or not we should interfere in the affairs of the supernatural, and anything else in between. To further his stress, he has to teach all non-human Dark Adrelite to take on human forms, covering the tracks of themselves outside their safe zones from any enemies. Trying to figure out a way to develop a similar converting system to the Adrelites. To ease his burdens, he spends his time with Tamamo no Mei, Kuroka, Esdeath or Mordred Pendragon. When they are busy, then he spends his time with what Mike considers to be one-night stands or friends. Due to continuing activities like that, he has adopted a slightly above average amount of perversity into his behavior. It's been long since the last time I'm in a city, said Issei as he explored a human city since well a long time. He is dressed in slim back-colored jeans, sneakers, and a black hoodie masking his upper face while using some kind of bracelet on his right wrist, which is called the Hiddener. It was created to hide our scent completely while out of the community. Apparently, losing our wings not just weakened the Darklighters, but it unleashed a scent for the Lord's forces or supernatural individuals. They would figure that out the hard way repeatedly until the Hiddener was developed and successfully tested. The only thing they can't count on for times are the advanced systems of the Federation that can identify their facial features. Admit it, friend. You're not fit for the commander-in-chief business. Says a voice in his head that causes Issei's eye twitches. What do you mean by that? Issei says to the voice in thought. What I mean by that is that you're more used to fighting a war instead of leading them. You basically have difficulty dealing with issues that involve further deep thinking of your actions. Added to the fact that you needed a cat, a fox, a knight, and a sadist to lower your stress down a notch that was gathered from your role. Furthermore, you are basically walking around possible enemy territory without guards. The voice explains the errors of Issei's apparent leadership. What do you expect of me, Godzilla? They just gave me this role because I survived being on the run for the past 90 years. I'm at least still not ready for leading a platoon then, and still not ready to lead the entire system. Besides, I'm 95% convinced that it happens uncontrollably. So you said, yet you show your colors. Issei raised an eyebrow at that. What do you mean by that, Godzilla? Oh, pretending to be ignorant at this. You can only trick those who aren't a part of your essence. I, on the other hand, am a part of your essence that knows you from the inside and out. When hearing that in his mind, Issei felt an urge to either disgust or puke at him. I don't know how to react to that statement. And that is my cue to explain that further. Ever since your banishment, you have been showing advanced signs of hot-blooded. Now I know you're making this up. Don't interrupt me, friend. The term hot-blooded refers to the youth. You do know that I consider being more ancient than any other human. Yet you're trapped in a teenager's body ever since she brings you back from the dead. Without thinking, Godzilla reminds Issei of the woman he once loved. The latter stopped walking bearing a grim expression as a tear surfaced, and his hands were clenching, as if his hands carried a pair of weapons. Realizing his mistake, Godzilla says, sorry, I didn't mean it, Issei. I was trying to prove a point. It's fine. Could you, for now, take a nap? I would like to be alone for a while. You could say what you are trying to prove later on, Issei thought in a demanding tone. Very well, Issei. Wake me up if something happens or we're back home, said Godzilla before taking a nap, leaving Issei alone to wander the human city. After the exploration of the city, Issei was about to head back to the hidden community until he sensed something. although his senses have been weakened due to circumstances. He closes his eyes and empties his mind as his senses gain significant strength. Enough strength to find what exactly he sensed. It is uniquely close to his land, meaning that it could be of supernatural origins. It would expose the Darklighters faster than Bruce Wayne's prediction. In his senses, he was able to identify it as some sort of barrier that has a diameter of 25 to 30 feet. Outside, he had a grim expression, but on the inside, he was panicking. The reason why is that the barrier's ore is made out of greed. In other words, a user from the Lord of Greed is in danger close to a Darklighter's base. A supernatural user sparks questions like what species does this user belong to, and what are they doing here? Further focusing on a part of the barrier, he was able to peek through it. From his perspective, there are only 2 energy signatures. The first one he sees appears to be a womanly figure with dim light surrounding her. There was one feature that easily identifies her species, 5 pairs of bird-like wings. He remembers Kuroka and Gariel telling him of what they know of the supernatural before his banishment. This feminine figure is a fallen angel, a being that falls from heaven by committing sins of, from Issei's perspective, any kind. The figure seems to be a leader class known as what Gariel tells him, that the leaders of the fallen angels are Cades. No, it is the cadre. This cadre seems to be wounded or beaten due to her lying down on the ground while her head is facing her opponent. At first glance, the other seems to be a male fallen angel as well. This one seems to have 4 pairs of wings, marking him to be not far off from being a cadre. However, in an oral sense, he is emitting the same aura as the barrier, but less thick and easily recognizable. On the right hand of this fallen angel lies the center of the aura, the greed ring. He fully knows what happens when an individual accepts a void's ring. When accepted, they became a puppet for the lords as they accepted all commands from their lords, even though they still retained their personality. His senses returned to its original set as he opened his eyes. His eyes show hints of conflict. The reason why is that he is deciding whether to ignore this or to intervene. After all, his duty as a Darklighter is to keep hidden because staying in the shadows is their only strength against anyone that is a threat to the humans. Losing that meant losing their edges. It is easily broken. And again, this user is supernatural in origins, and having supernatural beings in the Lord's side is disastrous. Since the supernatural beings are stronger than humans, and being recruited by a lantern make them stronger than a standard thrall. Luckily for the cadre, Issei isn't someone who would abandon those who can't fight back, especially if the figure is female. He put on a serious expression as he raised his left hand in the air like a fighter who wins a fight. Suddenly, he bent down like kneeling in front of loyalty and banged his fist into the ground, creating a tiny crater as he said, "Core Breaker." In an instant, his entire body was engulfed in the brightest orange glow. When the glow fades, Issei is in his Core Breaker armor. It has undergone great changes to the armor he wears. His once all-white tactician dragon armor became black semi-heavy-duty dragon armor. The orbs are in fire-like colors. What was used to be twin blades attached to the wrist is no longer part of the armor. His helmet used to have wing-shaped horns on the sides. Now, they are gone, and on the top of the helmet are 3 horns, 2 of them are small, while the one in front of them is like a sickle blade. These horns that replace the wing horns are in the formation of an arrow. One of the helmet visors became flaming eyes, while the other is regular orange. His tail is now thicker and has enough force to trip giants. His back is smooth and heavily armored, while a single yet smaller row of spikes is located where his spine. On the shoulder blades, arch-like lines are located at both sides of the spines. Unlike the colors of the orbs, the lines are dying red. The lines serve as a reminder of the cause of the changes of the armor, which is the loss of his wings. The feet are heavy-duty and resemble those of an actual Western-type dragon. He, then, started to run with his heavy armored boots, heading towards the dangers to handle this rare threat. Although he may lose his wings and the armor feels a bit heavier, he has enough training to move at sufficient speed. He just hoped that he made it in time. While Issei in his legendary combat attire on the way to the rescue, things were not going so well in the barrier. Inside the barrier, it was like walking into a war zone. The ground burned as pieces of lumber are found almost everywhere within the barrier. The only signs of life are 2 winged figures, one who was in the ground breathing as hard as she could do, while the other who was on the air wasn't any worse than his opponent. In fact, he has almost no injuries whatsoever. The feminine figure is a young woman, drop-dead gorgeous, that looked no older than her late 20s. She had long flowing navy blue hair that reached down past her posterior, which is plump and firm. She had side bangs that reached down to her midriff and front bangs that reached her nose and dirty cheeks, only showing off her bright violet eyes. Her skin is slightly pale, so it seems easy to get her skin dirty. She had a curvaceous body that personally voiced the word meaning of daughter bust, is practically one of the biggest sets that a woman is blessed with, and her hips were wide, giving her a jaw-dropping Hercules figure. Her flat stomach was easily exposed, showing off more of her flawless skin, even though it is currently dirty or somewhat bruised cut, as well as her perfect back arch. Before the battle even started, her attire consisted of a black, sleeveless tight-fit top that stopped before stomach, looking to enhance her breast size. With it, she wore a double-slitted black skirt that showed off her long, slender legs and thick thighs, with black high-heel boots that reached up to her mid-thighs. Now, some aspects of her attire were shredded off of her completely her glory, as some exposed areas have been cut, such as on her thighs, back, stomach, and arms. She is currently breathless as she glares at her opponent, and her wings are prepared to take flight at once. Her opponent is a young man that looks in his teens. He has red eyes and yellow hair that is spiked up. He seems to be wearing some sort of deepest green academy uniform that has a tattered collar and lacks the tie. The cuffs of his sleeves are designed to look like the kanji for king. He wears red earrings, a green stone necklace, and a purple band around his neck. On the right hand, there is a glowing dark green ring. Both the ring and the center of the uniform have a symbol. It's the symbol for one of the 7 deadly sins. He is currently in the air with his wings stretched to its edges and has an arrogant smirk. The female says, "How is it possible for you to beat me? You only have 4 wings while I have 10. It's completely impossible for a cadre to be beaten like this." The male says with a complete sense of arrogance, "Perhaps it's because I'm a man and you a woman. Unlike you, Penemu, I'm actively in combat while you as a woman do best in your status as a chief secretary do the advice and paperwork. In other words, you haven't been in combat ever since the Great War. Other than that, this battle proved that men are superior over women and that women should be their toys." The now named Penemu interrupted, "And this is the reason why you attack me, Nereus. Understand the actions you're committing. You have betrayed Grigori for such a weak cause to attack a cadre. Azazel will have you imprisoned in the Cocytus." What shocked Penemu is that the now named Nereus laughed at this so hard that he hurt his stomach. When Nereus calmed down, he smirks and says, as if, "Ever since the Great War, Azazel has been focusing more on sacred gears than on our kind. For many years, I forced myself to be loyal to that bastard. But now," before he could finish, he gently lands on the ground and says, "With this gift, I will relieve Azazel from his command, and I want you, Penemu, to join me." This caused Penemu to widen her eyes because she was sure that Nereus would kill her after saying that. She says as she was prepared to attack at the right moment, "Why?" He answers, "Ever since I was assigned to you, I've been having certain thoughts about you. At times, those thoughts turned into desire as I started to crave for you. You're by far the most beautiful woman I ever came across and wanted you to be mine. It was my desires and thoughts of you that granted me the gift. So, join me to overthrow our pathetic excuse of a leader." Penemu says, as much as Azazel's interests are in sacred gears and women, but he does prove to have the capabilities as a leader. Once that was finished, she was about to attack Nereus. The keyword was the word about. The reason is that Penemu was hit into the ground by what is described to be a green energy blast. She is on the ground and about to get up when a second energy blast that turns into halos and bars trapped her by the wings, arms, and legs to the ground on her back. She was struggling to get free, but it was futile. She, then, heard Nereus as he said, "Guess I should see that coming. I give you a proposal and you reject it. Lucky for me that I won't take no as an answer from you. Don't blame me but yourself as you choose a hard way. What are you going to do?" asks Penemu with a hint of fear as Nereus stands in front of her. "Isn't it obvious?" said Nereus as he tore Penemu's skirt off revealing her panties as he grabbed one of her fleshy orbs, the one that is exposed. Nereus smiled creepily as his eyes were clouded in lust and a tent appeared, scaring Penemu as she has nothing to stop him from doing whatever he's planning to do to her body. "If I remember correctly, you haven't had a taste of men in a long time. I'm going to make you submit and be loyal only to me. Let's see how strong you're when I plow you until you're just screaming my name out," said Nereus as he was about to get off his pants and her panties. Before he could do as he promised, the ring makes a sound as the light turns off and on, confusing both as to why the ring is acting like this. It was still alive as the barrier was broken in by a figure. Once the figure sees Nereus and Penemu states, the figure quickly shoves Nereus away from Penemu. Issei's pav, thanks to the abyss that I've chosen to intervene. Attacking a woman regardless she's a supernatural, human or otherwise is one thing, but going to rape her is a line that shouldn't be crossed. Thankful for the Forgotten Supreme Gear is greatly famous for having what might be considered an overwhelming advantage over the enemy. Voice commanded abilities such as Adapt, which grants legs boosters, and Superpower, which allows me to have unbelievable strength and endurance. Even though my Nexus Breaker's armor is like the skin of Godzilla, I have an ability called Reborn, which heals my injuries and repairs my armor, no matter how bad the damage is. These 3 abilities are, in my opinion, my strongest of all my unlocked or created abilities combined. Enough chat shit, brat. We have a battle to win. Godzilla says with a battle-hungry tone. In truth, Godzilla is more than staying focused on battles. In fact, that saved me from countless times of service as a great protector. I thought you were sleeping, I mentally said. Actually, when you entered the core breaker, I was awake at that time. Besides, we couldn't miss this opportunity, said a confident Kaiju. What do you mean by that, Godzilla? I asked. Godzilla answers, we're fighting a type of enemy that will test your worth as a leader. You should know firsthand that supernatural beings that turned into users cause more damage than the average users. Fine, at the very least. Let me handle this situation my own way. I say this with such tone that I know that Godzilla knows that there's no change in strategy at this soon-to-be fight. Just this once. I don't want to be blamed by others for sending you into the hands of death, nor I don't want to die with my first wielder. I only nod at this with a relaxing smile underneath the armor. Eventually, the fallen greed user gets on his feet and shrugs off his wounds, if he has any. He heard the user and the hints of outrage. What are you to prevent me from claiming my earned price? My hands clench and unclench as my body shook into battle at what he said. How dare he treat her like a trophy or reward of his work? But, I managed to control my anger and ignored it by turning around with intentions to help the female of the current user's species. Besides, I'm stronger to resist the thirst for women most of the time. I can resist one look of this fallen angel. That was before I turned around and looked straight at her. When I did, I felt like time had stopped, or my heart had stopped beating for several moments as I looked at this cadre. There was something about her that drew me to this woman like honey attracting the bears or the bees. Apart from that, I couldn't help myself from this feeling. It was so familiar to me a lifetime ago that I spent time with her. I could tell that I'm standing like awestruck in her views, but that look she gives me made me blush like a tomato at the sight of this woman. No, this goddess. Not to mention, the perfection of this woman's body triggers my perverted thoughts to surface. It was at that moment I wanted to ensure her safety and happiness. I approached the woman and bent down as I broke the circle by crushing it and the bars by snapping them. This deeply angered male because he was being ignored, but the user instincts have prevented him from carrying out his anger. Damn it, what's happening to me? Issei thought as his heart was still beating at a very fast rate. It had been like that since he had seen the female cadre. I think that you have fallen in love with this fallen angel. To my surprise, I got to admit that she is the crown jewel among jewels, Godzilla chimed in. How can you suggest that even after all I have been through? Issei asked back. That was different as your emotions were contained then. Now, your emotions are unleashed as they guide you. Just think of it this way, in a room full of your women, only this one affected you the most. That speaks quality in itself, does it not? Godzilla replied. I guess it does. Alright, this is my chance to talk to her and my chance to get rid of my opponent. Issei thought as he looked deeply into her eyes as one of his hands began to fix the clothing, as well as creating a new skirt for her to cover her cave of wonders further. As the woman's eyes widened of this as she gazed into the eyes of her hero and sensed the anxious sweeping out of armor. Issei takes this as a sign to say something. I was in the area when I sensed this. You are by far the most beautiful woman I've stumbled across. Your beauty surpassed that of Helen, who launched 1,000 ships into war. This causes Issei to mentally curse at this. Godzilla laughs in amusement at this, and the woman to blush at such words. Issei prayed for something or someone to interrupt this moment. Thankfully, someone has answered his prayer as the male fallen ignored his user instincts and launched himself at the being. Nereus is deeply mad at the thought of this sacred gear user trying to steal what is rightfully his. He was close as he created a greenish light spear ready to slay Issei. However, Issei just turned around and punched him to avoid being speared. The punch sends Nereus a few steps away. Then, Issei faced the female cadre trying very hard to ignore being trapped by her luscious beauty. Let me handle this matter first. The woman nodded as she looked away to hide her blush and wonder of who her savior is and his purpose of being here. Issei has completely focused on the fallen user who is getting back up. He could see the anger in Nereus. He could guess that he became the puppet of Gnanth because he wanted the female cadre all to himself. Perhaps the fallen user couldn't listen to reason and will be forced to kill him. However, he has a try-or-risk conflict with the fallen angels when one of their kind is killed by his own hands. This fallen might be a subordinate to a more powerful cadre or the female one. After all, the Darklighters and the Fallen are alike as they are targeted by both sides of the coin. Gathering his thoughts and having his body ready to be attacked by the fallen user should reasoning fail. What is your name, user? DSK, I'm not a user, low life. I'm Nereus of the Fallen Angels, trash. You shall know your betters better. Then, why did you have a greed ring in the first place? What, this? Said Nereus as he shows it to Issei. The ring as Penemu gains her attention, hoping to find the cause of Nereus's betrayal. This is the gift which bestows itself unto me. Is this what you're referring to? Issei nodded before further interrogating his possible opponent. So, the ring just comes to you, and you accept it just like that. Correct on that, said Nereus as he stood like a conqueror ignoring Issei who looked at the ground. No one else gives this to you? No one else. Now Issei knows that the lords updated those rings to search out their host, rather than lords giving rings to their thralls. Pretty smart move since lords have to expose themselves to do so. Whatever the case, he needs to slay him before he could bear fruit to the plans of the Void Lords. Before we fight, I have two last questions, says as Issei enters into his combat pose. Nereus became even angrier at this weakling thinking that the armored sacred gear user is stalling. What are they, scum? The first question is with the ring, what changes do you want to bring to your kin? This question caused the woman to look at him strangely at the sacred gear user, as well as Nereus does. Within a moment, Nereus says as he acts high and mighty to ensure that we, the fallen angels, are superior among all races by whatever the means, and to put women in their places as nothing but breeding stock. This caused disgust from Penemu, and even greater disgust for Issei and Godzilla. In his mind, Godzilla says, you know what, just kill him. You will be doing a great service towards the fallen angels. Issei snorted and narrowed his eyes at Nereus as he commended, I see. What is your name, Fallen? Nereus laughed as he said, trash like you don't deserve names of your better. Then, he was about to launch a similar attack that stops Penemu. He saw his opponent's left hand shape into a U aiming at the ground and heard a darker voice, Wave Blaster. An energy ball slams the ground violently from the U-shaped hand as the armor coils like a gun. After that, an energy wave emerges from that slams and is coming straight towards Nereus as he uses the greed ring to create a barrier. He remembers when Penemu was launching light spears onto him when he was down. He punches the fist that has his gift in the air about to curse and about to face his death when the energy from the ring blast out and protect like a mother would protect its young. However, it didn't happen this time as the energy wave struck the barrier and managed to break the barrier, surprising Nereus, but the barrier managed to save him from the wrath of the wave. Unknown to Nereus, Issei has taken advantage of the barrier being destroyed by his energy wave as he used what remained of his adroit speed to appear in front of the Greed Fallen. Once Nereus's eyes widened in shock as Issei was in front of him as he realized his mistake or two. Issei immediately kicks him off the ground and uses the tail to swipe him into the chunks of woods that used to be a bunch of trees with enough force for Nereus to form a crater. Before Penemu warned Issei, Nereus was airborne and about to strike him with a light spear. That was in vain as Issei broke the spear before it could damage him and after he grabbed it. Then, Issei quickly throws a fury of punches and kicks on the front and sides of Nereus as he was unable to stop even a single one in his dazed state. Nereus heard the voice saying spiral burst and he was hit by what feels like a fireball to his back. Lucky the ring creates a smaller barrier that sends him near the barrier he created as it trickled from below to the top of the dome. He suddenly gets up and about to launch green energy to his opponent only to find Issei nowhere to be seen. Is that the best you got, Greed User? Issei was on Nereus, announcing his presence via a brutal uppercut that sent Issei into the air once more. This time, Nereus managed to block the follow-up kick, if only just barely. The force behind it still him careening backward though. By the time he'd recovered, Issei turned his back to go to the surprised woman as she watched the fight. Issei says to Nereus, is this what you wanted? Does everything you have done, everything you compromise worth it? You aren't worthy of her. Not even worthy of your gift, user. This triggers the anger of Nereus greatly as he creates a barrage of light spears and uses the gift to summon more light spears and launch it to Issei. During that time, Issei, who looked uncaring as the voice says once more, spiral breathe as his mouth guard and blast Nereus light spears before it struck him. The result was a shockwave and smoke emerged to cover Issei completely. Finally, stopping after nearly a full minute of creating barriers of light spears and launching them at Issei, Issei was breathing hard as he waited for the smoke to clear. When nothing rushed out at him, Nereus allowed himself to heave a sigh of relief, only to freeze in place immediately after, as Issei spoke up right next to him, not bad boy, it's my time now. Fuck. As Nereus spun to address the threat, he came up empty, spinning around in search of his opponent, he came up blank each time. Are you looking for me, user? Once more turning to face the voice, this time he was met with the sight of a completely undamaged armored Issei, bringing his heel down on his face. Arg. With a scream, Nereus was thrown into the ground by Issei, forming a crater as Issei leaped back. Pulling himself out of the crater, Nereus was in bad shape. His clothing was dirty as he could feel that few of his bones were broken. Coughing, Nereus painted the ground he spat at with his own blood. Well, what the hell is he? Crawling on all fours, Nereus was trying his best to stand when he was forced back to the ground, courtesy of Issei's punch to his back. Smashed back onto the ground once more, Nereus's vision faded in and out of focus. Even more of his bones were broken, as somehow Issei's fist dealt some damage to his organs. At that time, Nereus didn't know if any of the wounds were fatal. The only reason why he was still awake and coherent despite the pain was that his body is supernatural in origin. Issei removed his fist and replaced it with one of his feet as he says, "You know, Godzilla was expecting you might give me a challenge instead, you disappoint him." "Oh well, a battle is a battle." Reaching down, Issei grabbed Nereus by the neck and lifted him up. "There are stronger beings out there that will erase you, should you either prove your uselessness or otherwise. Unfortunately, you're dealing with a stronger being that knows better." "Who fuck why you?" Nereus managed to spit out despite the pain and the chokehold. Issei wasn't amused. "You think that was funny, boy? Well, do you?" Punctuating each word with a powerful blow to the stomach, he left Nereus a coughing mess, as even more of his sight was blurry with blood. "You wanted to blame someone, blame yourself for this, boy. Did you really think you could upset the way things are as it is with your master Gnant's plans and get away with it? Who the hell is Gnant? I have never met him, and what are you talking about?" Issei blinked at this as Godzilla said, "A user that doesn't know his place within the Void's armies." "Now, I hear everything." Nevertheless, Issei answers, "Gnant is better known as the Lord of Greed that served the Void. Your gift is actually meant that you're a slave to Gnant force to fight against the forces of the Abyss. I ain't no slave to anyone." "What are the forces of the Abyss? Did your gift light brighter and dim for seconds before I came here?" Nereus nodded slowly due to the pain. Issei continues, "Did your instincts scream at you when you see me, or something stops you from attacking me for a while?" Nereus's eyes widen at this, for knowing what's to stop him from attacking Issei, as Penemu listens to this. The former slowly asks due to his conditions, "How do you know about that?" The response of Issei is informational as he lowers his warrior behavior as a mentor behavior kick in, its standard behavior of users. In general, those serve as a warning that your true enemy has revealed themselves to you. "What's the enemy? Let me introduce myself. I'm Issei, a Darklighter and bearer of the title, Fallen Guardian Dragon," said Issei as he sent an energy pulse to confirm it. While Issei focuses only on the user's face, Penemu notices something and yells at Issei. Too late to react, Issei was stabbed at his lower left rib by a light spear created by Nereus. He released Nereus as he gasped his wound and fell down. Penemu widens her eyes in horror as her savior needs help, and she barely has enough energy to save both him and herself from the traitor. Ever since his appearance and his words to her, Penemu has gained interest in the now named Issei. When he turned to look at her, she could tell that he was checking her out. But she felt his feelings that really captured her eyes. In the beginning, she could sense the love at first signs, but it slowly turns into feelings of sorrow, anger, and betrayal. She didn't know that he knew, or unknowing that she could sense it. Her thirst to know Issei has grown to new heights as he explains to his opponents. He announces that he's the enemy of the ring and calls himself a Darklighter and Fallen Guardian Dragon. Unknowingly to the combatants, she could feel more negative feelings from Issei as she wanted to comfort him. Now, Penemu wanted to join the fight as Issei's fall to the ground. Although Issei heals her and repairs her clothing, he didn't regain her the Standmia to create light spears or fly to save him. Her only hope is for Azazel to notice her delay to the meeting. Then, she saw Nereus slowly getting up and walking to Issei. She heard him saying, "You hurt me. For that, I'm going to make sure you die a horrible death." Surprising to her, Nereus kicked Issei in the chin as he humped into the ground. He lay in pain as Nereus continued to stomp on his chest. That inhumane moment is the last straw for Penemu as she struggles to stand up and save Issei from that fate. In her past, she witnessed someone take her pain as uselessness forced her to do nothing to stop it. Watching this caused a flashback of that moment caused her to do this. Consequences be damned, if her equals scolded her for this, she wouldn't let no one scapegoat her in the pain. She walked like a child that walked for the first time towards this poor excuse of tide turning the battle. After the stomping, Nereus creates an enchanted light spear, contrary to the ring, ready to slew Issei as he struggles to get on his knees as he spits out blood to the ground, getting ready to look up. Seeing this, she picked up the pace to stop Issei from getting killed. However, Penemu falls to the ground as she looks to the scene, hoping that she has time. Nereus sends the spear to deliver the final blow. Lucky for Issei, his reaction has saved him as the spear stabbed him by his raised hand only. His stabbed hand holds the spear from earning a head kill. Annoyed at this, Nereus aims the hand that holds his gift ready to send a lethal attack when Issei's free hand has grabbed his hand. Issei, then, took this moment to stand up as his wound made him wince in pain as blood flowed out. Once, he stands tall and strong, surprising Penemu and angering Nereus. With enough force, he headbutted Nereus to a fair distance. That was a mistake in terms of battle and warfare. As Issei headbutted Nereus in a distance, giving the latter an advantage to using his ring to blast and kill Issei. Not wasting this opportunity, Nereus throws his fist that holds his ring to finish his interference once and for all. However, the mistake wasn't issued, as nothing was happening that caused fatal injuries to the interference. Issei huffs a puff as if suppressing a chuckle as he raises a closed fist. It was intense when he opened it. In the hand lies the greed ring, shocking both Nereus and Penemu, seeing nothing that involves Issei taking off the ring from Nereus. It was at that moment the barrier vanished into thin air and the clothing that Nereus wears went to its original color of Grigori. It was a mistake indeed, but it was unexpected mistake. To finish this, Issei, despite his injury, uses the Adrelite speed to close the distance between himself and Nereus after he destroys the greed ring. With one act, he sent the same hand that crashed the ring like a missile. The hand went through the body like paper and seemed to be holding the still beating heart of his opponent. He said to his opponent with no remorse, "Those who make people slaves for their pleasure should die like the scum they are." With that, he crushed the heart like glue and retracted, dropping the mess of the heart as well as pushing the body of the now dead Nereus. It was at that moment she knew the battle was won before the finishing blow. The barrier was disabled as her senses came back with a vengeance. She could hear the animals of the forest or see the trees and the sky, but she focuses on Issei as her interest and worry increases the sight of him as he drops to his knees and his hands seem to try lessening the pain. The sign of the tail swinging rough, even banging the ground and her senses allowing her to feel living creatures' emotions, depict some form of anger. This ponders her as to why Issei is angry at this victory. Unless he is angry towards himself because of the cost of victory. Isn't it insane to be angry for being careless in a battle? Of course, people would scold in such a case, but it is unlikely. Could it be that he's an expert combatant? Due to a certain battle maniac, some expert combatants have the tenacity to outrage themselves if they make a mistake or receive a wound, sometimes both. If left unchecked, it led to self-destruction. Finally, with strength returned, Penemu stood up and walked slowly towards Issei. If he's here alone and she leaves him, there's no doubt that he will die without help. In her best interest, she would help Issei until help arrived. Then, she felt his emotions as he looked into her. Those feelings made her blush and her words died in her mind. After what seemed like hours, Issei broke the silence. "Are you alright, cadre?" Penemu blinked at this. "How do you know that I'm a cadre?" "Someone I know educates me on the ranks of some factions including your miss." Penemu quickly says, "It's Penemu. Just Penemu. This someone must be wise to inform you of potential allies. She is hardly someone that I go to for advice, but she is important to me. It is more like potential enemies instead of potential allies," said Issei as he only thinks of Kuroka as he got up before he clutched due to the wound. She gasped and immediately went to his side, surprising both Issei and Godzilla at this. She placed one of his arms around her neck and wrapped her right around his waist. She says in concern, "You shouldn't force yourself when you're gravely injured." His heart was beating faster and harder as he thought his blood was rushing to his head instead of out of the wound, and he felt her bosom touching his armored torso. He says once he no longer feels the blood rushing his head, "I have people who can heal me." "Yeah, if you can reach them," said Penemu as she put a hand on his wound. "What about Grigori?" "There's no doubt that my allies will be here any moment now." Thoughts filled Issei's mind of whether or not to accept help from Grigori. On one hand, his friends and loved ones will misunderstand that kind act as kidnapping and will make Grigori bleed as they rescue him. Then again, if he doesn't find help quick, his faction will be missing a leader. He looked into the eyes of Penemu as his sights were starting to get blurry. It was at that moment, he said, "Penemu, I'm in your debt." Before Penemu could respond, Issei placed a hand on his forehead while his legs felt heavy to stand as his eyes felt heavy to stay open. Suddenly his core breaker armor disappears in fireflies, whitish lights falling to the ground, exposing his identity to Penemu. The last things he heard and felt are Penemu yelling his name, the presence of fallen angels, as well as hearing their wings flapping before darkness claimed him. When he came around, Issei bolted upright once he noticed the ceiling differ from his room to find himself in a dark-colored bedroom. He looks around and finds the necessary objects needed in the bedroom. This room contained dark furniture as well as 2 doors and 2 faces of the room. The bed he lay and sat at has white sheets that seem to be stained with some of his blood. Out of instinct, his left hand assault where he took a light spear. Feeling bandages covering it, he looks down as he was just stripped of his clothing and replaced with bandage wrapping around his ribs. Confused about how he got here, he contacts the spirit within him, Godzilla. "Godzilla. If you can hear me, and I'm pretty sure that you hear me, please respond at this moment." It was long that the spirit responded, "You know that you're very annoyed like this when something happens without your knowledge." This caused Issei to roll his eyes. "Godzilla, what happens when I collapse?" "Pretty much the same. More fallen angels came and helped both you and Penemu to their headquarters. They treated you first because of Penemu's orders." This caused a pause in his heartbeat. "Penemu orders her subordinates to treat me instead of herself." "Yes, since you healed her. There was no need for medical attention to her except rest." "What happens to her?" "No doubt talking or reporting to her equals about her encounter with a user and you or whatever cadres do. Before, she was checking on you and was the one to change your bandages with new ones." Again, he touches the wound feeling that it has gotten smaller, but still, there's a hole. He mentally says in frustration, "What taking it so long to be fully healed?" Well, it's not my fault that your regeneration ability is affected because your wings were ripped apart. That was a rhetorical question, Godzilla. And that was a rhetorical answer, old brat. Don't you get smart with me. I'm not getting smart. I just got there. Say one more thing, go to hell. But that, Issei severed his contract with Godzilla. He sighed as he got up and walked to what seemed to be window blind. He was about to remove the blind to see outside when he heard his door opening and see towards the source. He found Penemu, still wearing the same outfit, walking and holding a tray of food. Penemu said she was embarrassed. Hello Issei. I brought some food for you. Issei blinks, how do you know my name? Penemu giggled at this after she got the food tray on a piece of furniture. I overheard you saying your name while you held Nereus, and as for knowing you were alive. I shouldn't underestimate some supernatural's abilities, thought Issei as he sat down on the bed and found the tray containing 3 pancakes with syrup on them, a few portions of bacon, hash browns, and some eggs, as well as a set of a fork, spoon, and knife. He uses a knife and fork to acquire a piece of the pancakes and takes a bite of it. He says in blessing, this is very good. Do you cook this? Penemu replied, yes, thank you for your modesty. After he finished the meal at a slow pace, he turned to Penemu who seemed to act almost like a maid. He says, I take it that I'm in Grigori HQ. Penemu nodded, when you collapse, a search team has found us, and I explain everything to them. As well, I've ensured that you're treated first due to your wound. Although you seem to be in perfect health elsewhere and you're healing, the healing is too slow even for a human. Issei gave her a sad smile, you could say that my healing is severely weakened. Do you know the cause of it? Unfortunately, I do. Penemu holds in her concern and curiosity towards Issei, for she's afraid that he might think that she is doing that for her faction. She asks to make sure, does this have something to do with what you are? Only his eyes show surprise, but his face didn't match his eyes for it graced Penemu with a smile. His eyes soon follow as he utters, I shouldn't compare the senses between humans and the supernatural. Penemu blinked at this as confusion set in. He makes it sound like he's beyond humanity and the factions of the supernatural. She wanted to voice this but settled with silence instead. Once she maintains control in her mind, she poses, what do you know about Azazel? The answers with some difficulty, Azazel. According to the Book of Enoch, Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Bible, Azazel is one of the fallen angels that fell from heaven before the time of the flood. He is the leader of the fallen angels. He taught men the art of warfare and of making weapons and armor. He taught women the art of deception of appearance. He was captured by the archangel Raphael and chained Azazel to Doodle. I heard a rumor that he has escaped Doodle and somehow made himself a scapegoat to the people. Azazel is a master tactician who studies his opponents and the situation before making a move. Besides that, there are many rumors about him. Penemu is shocked beyond relief that Issei is very informative about her friend and leader. She fake off, you learned all that from your friend. What about the rumors about him? The answer is honestly, actually, my friend only said that he is a leader of the fallen angels. Anything else I learn about him is the main source, and the rumors talk to him. Besides the rumor of his escape and status as a scapegoat, he became a fallen because of his lust over women, a research fanatic, loves to collect things, and a pacifist despite another rumor stating that he's the most sinister of the fallen angels. Penemu sweat dropped at this while she titters. Most of it hit the spot on Azazel, however, the rumor of his sinisterness is hardly true. What do you think about him, Issei? Based on what I've learned is that Azazel is a dangerous enemy that must require a calm mind and caution to watch out for him. However, should Azazel disprove his vault as a threat, then I'll count him as a valuable ally as well as a true friend. Penemu's mood lightens at what she wanted to hear, glad to hear this. Issei, would you like to meet Azazel? Issei looks straight into Penemu, does he know? Yes. He won't try anything against me due to what happened. As I say, I explain everything to them and vouch for you that he won't do anything wrong. Only him? No, there are other leaders, as well as some special ones, who wanted to meet you. Are you going to be there? Penemu paused at this question as no one asked about her personally being in a meeting before. She blushed deeper as she said in a shy manner, yes, I'll be in it. Do you have a shirt ready for me? Penemu nodded as she gave a Grigori male uniform shirt and Issei accepted with care as he slowly put it on. He walks to her side, will you escort me to meet Azazel? Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support the Agent 22 for writing that awesome fanfic and also make sure to comment on this story. See you in the next video. Goodbye.